when we are doing practices like meditation, yoga, maybe we're just reading something, reading some poetry, or taking a walk with a friend. There's a million ways that we can attend to being more in the present moment. This is a funny thing. People talk about, oh, I want to be in the present moment. Like, where else are you going to be? But I think that what's important is we can bring our attention to the present moment, which we are always in. And that's actually an important distinction. What do we do with our attention, with our awareness? Because we're always here. There's no other place we are. But when we bring our attention and our awareness to the present moment, it's like we're waking up. It's that term we use in spiritual practice sometimes. Because what do we wake up to? It's like, oh, we're here. There isn't any other place to go.
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Ulrich, and I'm also the founder of the mothership website of this podcast called The Goodness Exchange. Over there, you can have access to what's right with the world. We've written thousands of articles about innovators, amazing people with crazy good insights for our times. We spend all our time shining a light on folks who are carrying a lantern for innovation, for fresh insights, and just generally making the world a better place. And we're going to start with one of those idea people right now, Flint Sparks. I don't know where to start with an introduction of Flint. Flint has become a friend of mine over time. We were introduced in a wonderful way. We both enjoy an amazing, our friendship with an amazing Nat Geo photographer. Do you think that it was DeWitt who introduced us, Flint?
I think it was. It was DeWitt Jones.
Yeah. I think it was too. So DeWitt
and then
has
I introduced
also...
you to more people. So.
Oh, that's right. So, yes. Sonny Brown.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So Flint and I have this expanding relationship, and it's like a spider web of goodness and progress. And I'm going to make sure that those two episodes we're getting started very informally here to Flint because we're friends. But I'll make sure those two episodes are in the notes over at the Goodness Exchange.
Great. We're just hanging out talking. This is a good way to start the year.
It is. It's such a good way to start the year. So Flint is a former psychologist of decades, and he's also a Zen teacher. And that was right in what strikes down for me, because I always say, and you've corrected me you've improved my way of thinking on this before, but I tend to be not too spooky. I'm kind of a scientist person. And I love that you have this background of bringing, an academic kind of like hardcore old school way to this amazing, beautiful practice of Zen. I love that there's both there for you, and that you have this really practical, ordinary person, I consider myself an ordinary person, way of talking about some really big, sometimes complex and scary topics. So we're going to start with one of those everyman kind of every person sort of topics right now.
Yeah, I sometimes think of myself as a bridge.
Yes.
Linking things because I enjoy it. And I love that you call it old school, because I'm old. My birthday's next week too. So.
Oh, we're all old.
There's this sort of playfulness that we're enjoying right now. Recently, someone asked me some questions like you asked, really good, deep questions. And I laughingly said, I think my students should get a cap. And on the front, there should just be the word, oh, or age, like, oh, with an exclamation point and a question mark. So it's like, oh, or oh. And then on the back, how those caps are, there's a little phrase that says, now this. It's like, oh, now this. How do we, instead of, no, not this, which is what we see so much happening now. How can we meet the world that's going to keep changing and surprising us and maybe disturbing us? Maybe there's great beauty. That's what you're about in the Goodness Exchange. But no matter what's coming toward us, and as we start a new year and many, many new things around us, what became a joke, suddenly I thought, this is actually kind of a central meme in what I do. It's like meeting things and then, oh, with curiosity. We talked about that in the last, and a willingness to keep choosing the life that I'm given.
This is huge. You did mention to me that concept at the pre-call. And I have to say, I've had 2 weeks of complete ups and downs roller coaster ride. And I thought of you dozens of times, just like that, because we do have this choice to go, oh, not like, oh, no, or oh, whatever, like now that, now this.
Yeah, and the O is the moment of sort of waking up to notice. That's where bring our attention to bear on what's happening. Because as you know, and I know, we're ordinary folks, like you said, and so we have habit patterns, elements in us that are protective, that have fears, and we start shaping our reactive experience to the world really, really fast. And all of the conditioning that we bring to each moment. All of that's called personality. I mean, we bring ourselves, but if there is anything essential in deep practices that I'm offering as a Zen teacher, is how do we meet life just as it is, instead of through all the filters. We have the filters, of course, and that's part of meeting life as it is knowing, oh, this is how I'm built.
Yeah. All right. So we are going to publish this episode. We are recording today in December, early December, but we're going to publish this on New Year's Day.
Right.
Wednesday.
Hence the notes about starting a new year.
That's right. I'm not sure I'm any more better at anybody else than anybody else about New Year's resolutions, but I do take advantage of the new year and my birthday and maybe, the first day of summer or the first day of spring or whatever. There's these nice times in our life when it is good to be contemplative about the life we have and the life we want. And I think that New Year's is always a good time to kind of look back and be a little, be a lot grateful, because there's always, even when we're not happy, there's something to be grateful for.
Sure.
That's just
we have a life.
101. That's right. And yet, we do have aspirations. Like most New Year's resolutions are aspirational. So even if somebody's tuning into this podcast and it's way past New Year's, it's always time to wake up another day and make it a new day and a new start. So,
each moment, each new breath, is another possibility.
Yeah. So talk to us about that. These times in our life that we make time to be contemplative and think about things perhaps in a fresh way that get us closer to the life we want to lead.
Well, like I said, that's available to us every single moment. When we are doing practices like meditation, yoga, maybe we're just reading something, reading some poetry, or we're taking a walk with a friend. There's a million ways that we can attend to being more in the present moment. This is a funny thing. People talk about, I want to be in the present moment. Like, where else are you going to be? There's not any other place you can be, actually. But I think that what's important is we can bring our attention to the present moment, which we are always in. And that's actually an important distinction. What do we do with our attention, with our awareness? Because we're always here. There's no other place we are. But when we bring our attention and our awareness to the present moment, it's like we're waking up. Hence that term we use in spiritual practice sometimes. Because what do we wake up to? It's like, we're here. There isn't any other place to go. There's an old Tibetan teacher, and I can't remember exactly the words he used, but he said, someone asked him about how to do this. He said, well, don't prolong the past. Don't invite the future. Don't fear appearances, and don't disturb your innate wakefulness. Now I'm going to say a couple of things. Don't prolong the past, but be here. Don't invite the future, but be here. Don't fear appearances. That's the reactivity. And be here. And don't disturb your innate wakefulness. There's an assumption in that your innate mind is quite present and awake. And don't mess with it. Just be here. All of them are like, be here now. The old Ram Dass phrase. I think it's important that I'm emphasizing this thing about we're actually always here. There's no other place we could be, but can we bring our attention and our awareness to the present moment? I was reading something the other day about taking a walk, like in the forest, like where you live in Vermont. It's so great to take a walk. And if you're following a map or a GPS, it's super easy to get lost because you're not paying any attention. But if you have to walk and notice the spot of sunlight here or the tree is there or which way the sun is coming from and what the path actually looks like as you walk it, then when you're coming, you know how to get back. But otherwise, actually using maps and these ideas, basically, because they're maps are in our head, it's easy to get lost because you're not paying attention.
So I remember a day when I just happened to have a day where I was going to be busy, but not crazily busy. And I'd had a similar conversation. Maybe it was with you. I don't recall. But I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to spend the whole day being present. And I started like making little hash marks on a piece of paper whenever I wasn't, and I'd have to get myself back. And I stopped counting after 25.
Yeah. When your attention goes away, you're always there.
Yeah.
And the intention is moving. And you keep coming back, which is essentially what meditation invites. It's a we call it a practice because you're practicing something you want to get good at, which is having your attention here.
I think it's really important in our lives right now to be present for the people that we love. I just, oh gosh, have you been to a restaurant lately, Flint, and seen a family at a dinner table with everyone looking at their phone? And they got little kids they've handed a phone to. It breaks my heart that people are together and not together, and it's become normal. Talk to us about being present for the people we love.
Well, there's a lot of distractions, of course, and that's something that's we all see. In fact, we all participate in. From the things that are quite obvious, like an iPad is a great babysitter. People give something to the kid, and I understand there are difficult times. So to bemoan that won't help anything. This is where we are, and this is what we need to learn to manage. But I'm going to actually answer your question or respond to your question in a much broader way, if it's okay.
Yeah.
And I may have spoken about this last time too, but because of the work I've done for so long, if I sort of put my old psychotherapist hat on and developmental psychologist hat on, we know that the most robust predictor of adult well-being is secure attachment early on in life. And there's a whole bunch of research and a lot of data about that. It's very strong, very robust predictors. And by that, essentially, I mean, you're well loved. Someone is there, they care about you, they resonated with you. And so you have a nice, strong attachment. So love is the most important thing in the beginning. My work as a psychologist was for many decades in working with people who were medically ill or dying. At the end of life, all that really mattered in some version, people would say, is, was I loved and did I love well? And so I think, well, it's good in the beginning, it's good in the end, it's probably good all along, is this capacity to love. And so it became clear to me, and I think I said this last time, that my work is somehow softening barriers to love, because that's the main thing. And so to be here, to go, oh, now this, meaning what's in the way of my caring for myself and caring for the ones around me, or allowing their love in. I'm like you. I've been in the helping, caring profession all of my life. So recently, someone asked me, I was doing some task, and they came and asked me, can I help you? And I said, well, what? Because sometimes I don't hear. But then they were going to say something, and I stopped them. And I said, wait. I actually heard what you said. Can I help you? It just didn't make any sense to me. And I said, that's a shock. I realize for me to be the one receiving the help. And so I had to wake up in that moment. There was a little bit of a barrier to that. Not that I would reject it. I just wouldn't consider it in a certain way. And so the ability to be loved is also a very important thing.
So, yes, And that able to accept help. Oh, it's so hard for some folks.
Yeah, for some people,
Yeah.
the way that we manage the care that's around. Some people have a longing and a grasping and even a manipulative desire to try to get something that seems unsatisfiable. That's a
Mm-hmm.
whole thing.
That's a whole
Others
different thing. I bet.
is to be a caretaker and not notice that so much
Yeah.
and be the one who cares. Some
Mm-hmm.
people don't notice at all. That's why in Buddhism we talk about suffering being the result of either grasping, aversion, or delusion. You either lean into things, lean away from them, or you don't notice so much,
Mm-hmm.
rather than, oh, now this.
Yes.
Mhm.
I love that. The other day I'm doing errands and I'm driving and it's raining out and it's cold. It's Vermont, 39 degrees, raining. And I'm going down this busy road and I can't even believe my eyes. There's a woman in a I didn't know it was a woman at that stage, but I could see somebody going down the road in a very, very minimal side edges of the road in a wheelchair, in a mechanical wheelchair,
Oh,
straight into the wind and the rain. And for a second, I was just like, wait, what am I
vulnerable on
seeing
so
here?
many levels.
Yeah. And so there was a driveway to a business before her. So I pulled into that driveway and I jumped out and I can see now it's a woman and she's leaning in and she has no coat. And I said, gosh, because I got a big 4-wheel drive vehicle and I'm a super strong girl. I said, gosh, let's just stop right here and put your unit in the back of the truck and I'll take you wherever you need to go. And she said, no, I'm fine, but I just forgot my coat. I just didn't realize how bad it was. She said, do you know where Tractor Supply is? It was a good mile and a half from where we were.
Oh,
Oh, right. Oh, now this. So I said, oh gosh, nope. No. And I said, how can I help you? And she said, well, my guinea pig has ran out of food. And I just, it breaks my heart to see him hungry. So didn't you know that my car, I was going to put a bunch of old clothes in the Salvation Army, the box. So
mhm.
I said, oh, well, I can run out to Tractor Supply for you and get that. And so she sent me a picture. We exchanged phone numbers. She sent me a picture of what the bag looked like. She was very insistent it was the same bag. So he didn't get sick. And so I piled a bunch of the clothes that were in the back of my car on her, made her sit the other way. I had an umbrella, so I gave her that. And there she sat, ran to Tractor Supply, and came back, and it was just what she wanted. And then again, I offered to get the whole darn unit in the car. And my husband even came along. He was like, why is my wife on the side of the road? And she wouldn't let us get that, because we could have both for sure gotten it in, but she wouldn't let us. And off she went. And it was all so lovely that I thought to myself, gosh, I think I got as much out of that as she did. This ability to offer help, to accept help, to just be in a helping cycle. Then I went to the grocery store and I was 10 times nicer than I think I would have been. What?
Yeah, generosity and gratitude feed on each other.
It worked on me, but I don't know how it worked on her. She was delightful,
I
but
was leading a retreat not too long ago, and we were teaching something from the traditional, the loving kindness sutra from the Buddhist time. And it's beautiful. And as people asked deeper and deeper questions, someone said, I'm not sure I really get it. Could you summarize? Could you make it really? I said, sure. And I said, learning comes best through your body. So here's what we'll do. I said, so stand up and do this with me. I'm going to ask you to do something and say something. I'm going to say it and do it, and then you do it right back.
okay.
Okay? Okay? So you and I can do it right now, Linda. It's very
Okay.
simple. Okay? So I'm going to do a little hands like this and a little bow, and I'm going to say something, and you say it right back to me, and then I'm going to do a second one, and that's all.
Okay.
Ready? Okay, here's the whole thing. Ready? Thank you for being so kind to me.
I thank you for being so kind to me.
Thank you for receiving my kindness.
Thank you for receiving my kindness.
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole
That's
thing.
the whole sutra.
Wow.
Thank you for offering your kindness, and also thank you for receiving my kindness.
That's powerful. What if you did that with your kid that's still job searching after weeks and weeks, maybe months? What if you just were kind like that in your kitchen instead of, so how's the job searching going?
Right. And you can even refine it more. As they come in, just touch them.
Mm-hmm. Like there's so many, it's what you just did is just racing through my mind. My husband and I recently sold our dental practice. We're semi-retired now, nearly retired. And, when you transition a big business that you've had for 35 years, it's not all unicorns and butterflies. And so he comes home and, man, we just launch right in. And I'm going to try that tonight when he comes in. I can already see 10 applications for this. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So
anything we do to remember is what brings us, remember what? Well, the word sati,
okay,
which is the root word that we translate as mindfulness.
Okay.
In English. It means to remember.
I didn't know that. Okay. Oh, really?
To remember. To come back, to remember who we are, what this is, what's happening.
Okay. Lovely.
So small things we do, like with your husband. Remember?
It's so true. And, we don't know when the other one's going to need that more than anything. Like, I don't really know what he's been through anymore because I'm actually the retired one at home and he's still in the thick of it. So, gosh, you just never know how much of an impact you can have on somebody else.
No, so our attention, if it comes to care and sort of mindful, diligent care, is part of what our practices help us return to. It's what people want. It's what you want to express and what you want to receive. It's really in there. Even when you see what looks like people who are kind of mean or harsh or difficult, it's because of the lack of love and the lack of what we're talking about that it causes that. It's just a suffering.
Okay, so a lot of times what takes us, because I think I don't know, I just think most people have good intentions. They don't walk around wanting to be mean or short or harsh or anything. It's just we're busy. Our minds are busy. And plans change in an instant. And then we're dealing with this new future. Talk to us about plans change, because that's essentially what you're referring to with the hat, right? Like, I'm going through my this and that, and then this happens. So talk to us about how we can, like, expectations are what we're struggling with. Do you have a...
Well, I mean, it's a pretty common thing for people to talk about, both in psychological and spiritual disciplines, is the difficulties around expectations, which is building essentially a virtual reality. We talk about virtual reality these days. We do it all the time. We build up a virtual reality, then we compare it to what's actually happening, and the gap is called suffering. And the gap is usually because we're, I would say, on one side we have hope, on one extreme, and on the other side we have despair. And this O is walking straight between those two into the face of uncertainty. What we typically want in coping strategies is to turn despair into hope. But hope is not really that stable. And so we have to face uncertainty, which feels like vulnerability. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And we don't want to be vulnerable. We want to be more and more stable. I mean, that's our...
Yeah, but because we want to ignore the fact that everything is impermanent and everything is interdependent. Those are the three marks of existence in Buddhist teachings. Everything's impermanent, everything's changing, and everything's interdependent with everything else. You can't separate yourself out. And the lack of understanding those two means you're going to suffer a little bit. And that's what we're talking about. Unnecessarily. There's difficulty that comes with life, but the unnecessary suffering. So vulnerability is the embodied, feeling of what's going on in the world when it's changing all the time. And these days we've had, things change so quick, and then we know about it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that. So I've spent the last 11 years doing a significant amount of public speaking. and doing a lot of this kind of conversations and writing for different groups and magazines and this and that. And I got to say, I've spent my whole time telling people not to tune out the news.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that I used to think that we just got to stay strong. We have to know enough about what's good in the world to be able to stay on our feet, despite, a really cold, harsh wind coming right in our face from the news every day. And I'm not talking about checking the news all day.
Right.
When I was a dentist, I would drive. My drive took me 12 minutes into town. I would listen to NPR. I figured I probably got everything I needed to know about the world in that 12 minutes. And my existence would be safe. Somebody would tell me if I missed something that I needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think the world feels so topsy-turvy that I'm not telling people to do that anymore. So talk to us about what we just talked about, this expectations or this plans change concept, like this, now this, because it is so easy to listen to the news and go, now this.
No, not this.
Yes, or no, not this.
Well,
so,
what you're talking about is how to nourish yourself. And the news feeds, these are such general statements, I know, but because there's so many different types, but we're inundated with information. And these days, information that it's hard to know how accurate it is or how balanced it is. Like, we as human beings can't survive unless we eat and are nourished by food, but there's some pretty bad food we could eat. We're eating, but it makes us sick. That's maybe a crude analogy, but what is it that you want to take in? And so I think we have to be discerning. You can't say, because there is a lot of bad food out there that may be tainted, I shouldn't eat. Well, you can't do that because you'll die. But you also don't want to be unmindful of what you ingest. And the same is, I think, true with what we call news. And now I say it that way, what we call news, because there's so many, you and I are old enough to remember that all you had to do is just turn on the TV and watch Walter Cronkite and you had it.
That's it. Half an hour.
Someone you could trust, a voice that you had confidence in, news that you thought was accurate. Well, that's
those days are gone.
Not even available any longer.
Right.
So you have to be more discerning. That takes more.
What do you do? What do you do, Flint?
It depends on the day. Some days I lean in because I kind of, watch the train wreck, the horror show that happens. And other times I turn everything off because I can't take it anymore. Those are the extremes, of course. So I try to be mindful. There are times in which here at home, like during the presidential race, it was so tumultuous no matter where you stand. And so there are times when, like in a debate, as an example, turn it on. It's okay, maybe we should watch this. After 2 minutes, I turned to Aaron and I said, can you do this? He said, no. I said, I can't either, so we turned it off. It's like we test and see. It's like, I know this is going to be too disturbing. And it's not actually helpful.
Okay. And is that sort of the guiding light for us all on how we, what we decide to take in?
I don't think there is a guiding light. The guiding light is to pay attention. I can't say, take this in and don't do that, because it's going to be different for everyone. Everyone's nervous system is different. Everyone's political approach is different. Everyone's longing and need for these things are different. But you have to be awake and pay attention.
Well, I guess that's what I meant by, let your feelings be your guide. If what you're hearing is triggering a whole lot of wacky-dacky stuff in your mind, whether it's fear or scarcity or all that, then you have to say,
if I'm too emotionally triggered to sort the information I'm receiving,
yes,
then that information is not going to be useful.
Right.
If I have enough resilience and capacity to listen and to say, well, that seems kind of off. I know that's actually not true. These things are useful. That's encouraging to me. If I have the resilience to do that, then I'm in good shape. But if I'm not, if it's then it's going to be useless for me to attempt to take in what's happening.
Can I give people a little example of that? This strikes me right between the eyes. So I'm not going to talk about it in detail, but I have a very bad childhood tragedy that involves a lot of violence in my life. So I can't entertain movies, because most movies, that's the whole thing, is some horrible violence, right? But I think you just solved a problem for me right there in what you said, is that my kids will say, "But mom, it's such a great movie," and my kids are sensitive. They know, and they're getting so much big, heartfelt issues that they're getting out of this movie that they feel good about, that are making them feel good, but they don't have my experience. So they can get through the violent part to get the big message that feels helpful and useful. Right. And that's cracked the code on that whole movie thing for me.
And for example, I have some friends who either have some traumatic past and or they have a lived experience that's not the same as mine. I have very successful, sophisticated African-American friends, but if they watch certain things, they're going to have a different experience. And they'll say, "You don't understand what that sounds like to me." And so I have to say, "Yeah, tell me, I want to know." And it's just the way it is. Sometimes we don't understand the other person's experience and the way they're going to receive something.
And do you remember how you worded it a minute ago? I'll go back and look, but you said, my interpretation of what you said is, I just don't have the capacity, either right now or maybe never for me, to take in the good part of this movie, for instance, or the good part of the
capacity, the resilience, the bandwidth. There are various metaphors you can use to utilize what's being offered to me.
Yeah.
I can't use it.
Yeah.
And
the
so
violence shuts it out for me. Okay, got it.
Yeah, all I'm going to get is the static. It's not a signal that's going to remain clear.
Yeah. But somebody else's lived experience is going to allow them to get the good stuff, the philosophy or the what have you out of this.
Yeah, it's think about it this way from a purely scientific point of view. It's like a signal to noise ratio. If there's too much noise in the system, like when we're doing this, we can't hear, we can't record, we can't see, something's off. We need for the noise to be low enough to where we get a clear signal. If the noise inside our heart, our mind, in the relationship is too high, the signals aren't clear. And now I think, and this is a polemic statement, but anyway, I think that a lot of what happens in news, certainly in social media, is there is a concerted attempt for the noise to be high in order to distort messages and trigger people in a certain way, because if they are made to be fearful, then they will do certain things. And none of that's based on clear information.
Right. So
that's another thing.
I think maybe in the new year, maybe that's the way I'm going to frame it up a little bit better. Don't just tune out of the news entirely, but be sure to pay attention when there's a lot of noise.
If you want to tune out, first tune in. Tune in to where you are. What am I available to? What's my capacity? What's my curiosity? Sometimes I'll hang in there, like when your kids say, "Mom, just," and I'll say, "Okay, this is triggerable, but let me hang a little bit and see." Sometimes you might want to hang in there for something that's, not your most favorite thing to watch on the news feed, even about something, about that's going on in the world or a political thing. But at some point, it's essentially a violence to your system to make yourself do something that's too violent. We know darn good and well that we're going to get the summary in some other place. It's going to come back and we'll get the information,
Yeah. You know how often this happens to me? There's a good movie that I recommend. I watch one movie a year at most because of this problem. I can't get past the violence in most movies to get whatever deep meaning that everyone else is getting out of it that they feel good about. So there's this movie called The Purpose of a Dog. Have you ever seen The Purpose of a Dog?
No.
It is. Well, I have a friend that's an animal lover, and gosh, she is always saved. She's got 4 dogs in her house at all times that need a good home. She's just got a great heart. And she turned me on to this movie. I think it has Kevin Bacon in it, maybe. I can't recall. But anyway, it's a well-made movie with good folks. And every single person I mentioned this movie to that I know is a dog lover that would love it says to me, "Oh, I can't watch it if it's going to be sad. I just can't watch it if it's going to be sad."
The vulnerability of the animals.
They know right off that if there's a movie called The Purpose of a Dog, it's going to have some, old yeller kind of moment where you're crying in your hands. And this movie definitely doesn't. So if people want to have a look, but it makes you think about the dogs in your life in a wonderfully new way. And I always use that movie as an example of, my best friend Jane made me watch that movie, and I trust Jane, and she knows my history. She knew I could get through it to get the big message, which I absolutely adore. And every day I look at my dog, I think of that movie and the big message in it. So highly recommend it.
There are ways that sometimes difficulties and taking ourselves to our edge can inform us.
Yes.
Because we're not just saying don't avoid everything that's hard.
Yeah.
Because that's often where we learn something. But you have to stay awake and aware.
Yeah. It's so huge. It's so huge. All right. So we wrote down, when we had our pre-call a couple of weeks ago, we wrote down some topics that I just don't want us to miss.
Okay.
And so some of the next part of our conversation, we're going to take a break, but we come back, we're going to try and hit some issues that I know are useful and thoughtful in people's lives right now. So let's take a break and we'll be back. You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness. Okay, we're back with Flint Sparks. So Flint and I are sitting here, and we took a little break. We're getting a drink of water, and I noticed over his shoulder, you're going to have to turn your camera a little bit more.
You notice this little thing.
Yes, this crook, this piece of driftwood or whatever. So now, because of the way we'll cut this, turn it so it's even a little bit more right there. And we launched into the nicest conversation I want you to share with folks.
What I did is I found this piece of driftwood on the beach here on Molokai in Hawaii. And I love the feel of it. Sometimes, when you have a great piece of driftwood, they're silky and wonderful, and the shape of it I really like. But when I hang it like this, it looks a bit like a question mark, which wasn't my intention. I just like the shape. So there's this dynamic flowing, and it looks a little bit like the top of a crook, of a staff or something. So I liked that. And then when I was teaching in New Mexico once in a center, there was on my desk, there was a lamp. And on it was this titanium plumb bob. And it was on a little filament line. So if everything moved, it would move, but then it would always come back to center. It's like, oh, that's an interesting analog to what we're doing. And I found this one, and I wanted one in this color. It's a solid brass. It's old. And then it said on the byline, this was produced in 1951. It's the year of my birth. Just happened. So I bought it, of course, and it's on a little monofilament line, so you can't see it. But this is a little art piece of my own. So there's the dynamic, flowing aliveness of life. And then at the center is this ability to always come back to center, always come back to stillness. And because I'm a Zen teacher, I always enjoy these kind of wabi-sabi kind of dynamic things. Curiously, and I'll show you the other side, because you're aware of calligraphers in the Zen tradition will do the insos, the circle.
Yes.
Which are these black sort of beautiful a sense of completeness and wholeness and fullness.
A sweeping completeness. Yes. Oh, there you go.
But this one is gold and pink, and it isn't somber, it's aliveness. And so these are the kind of things that I choose because they represent some of the things that we're talking about in artistic form. And art is so essential, I think, to take us further than our analytical minds and scientific minds can.
Okay, so both of those things would remind me to go back to center. But tell me what that actually means. Like, I'm an ordinary person, just getting out of the working world, trying to make my house some order. I've got kids still live in my house from the pandemic. Like, and people's lives are in chaos very often. Like, what does get back to center actually mean?
Well, in its most fundamental sense, I think it would have something to do with being re-embodied.
Okay.
It's not just an idea. And this is why meditation, yoga, a lot of those kind of practices bring us back to, let's use the breath as the most simple and common way that we do that. You know, if you're busy and crazed, if you come back to noticing just your breath and just your belly, not this kind of breath, but you begin the process of coming back to center. The problem for most people is that they're not really that thrilled about knowing how they feel, because it's not a good feeling. But if you have the capacity to say, oh, I'm anxious. Oh, I'm scared. Oh, I'm sad. But equally, oh, I'm joyful. I actually feel fine. But to take what's called, one of the old Zen teachers says, take the backward step and turn your light inward. You used the example when you did the introduction of being a lantern. Turn that light inward and just care for yourself like you would your pet that you love, like you mentioned, or your child. How are you? How are you feeling? And if you want to take it a little further, if you notice, and I adjust my posture when I do this, it's like, notice, are you grounded? Or do you feel your feet on the floor, or your body sitting in the chair? You feel something holding you? And if you start paying attention to your body, some of the other things start not being quite so present. So let's see, am I grounded? Okay, and what am I aware of? Right now, you might be aware of my voice. You might be aware of the computer in front of you. You might be aware of other things around. Your awareness can be quite expansive, or it can be quite focused. So I'm grounded and I'm aware. And then you think, okay, I'm going to put my hand. If you just put your hand over your heart for a second, do that. And feel your body being grounded into the chair, and know that you're attending to this. But even as your hand arrives, it's already done this, but you can feel the texture of the fabric, maybe the warmth of your hand. Does your chest come up to meet your hand, or does your hand meet your chest? So you feel more present. You feel your presence by this small act. So you're grounded, You're aware, you're present, gap, grounded, aware, present. Mind the gap. Come into the present moment. This is not my formulation. There's someone else who can't, but it's really useful.
It really is.
That's like, you don't have to do fancy esoteric Asian practices.
Yeah.
Notice if you're grounded, pay attention to what you're aware of, and bring yourself back to a presence. And then you can ask the question, how am I? How am I doing?
Mm-hmm. Tell me, some of those questions. Like a lot of our questions cause us more suffering.
Mm-hmm. One of my good friends was just telling me a couple of days ago how he was visiting with one of his, can't remember if it was a granddaughter, a niece, but a really young person. And he was attempting to make conversation and engage this little girl who was, I think, maybe early adolescent or maybe pre-adolescent, but close in there. And he said, how are you? And she said, let me see. She looked at her phone to see how she was. She looked to see what likes she had. Her response to how are you was that.
Okay.
That's not what we're talking about, of course. How do we engage each other in such a way that our well-being and our sense of groundedness in our own body, our sense of gentle awareness, our presence with each other, has to do with what happens between us. I think I may have said last time, it's a kind of a cute line in a way, but I said, an email is not a whisper in your ear. A tweet is not a kiss on your cheek. A Facebook friends request is not an outstretched hand. These are none of that's embodied. And with the way things are moving, especially with artificial intelligence, some of these operating systems do things that your brain wants to do. These things act like they're responding to you. They act like they care about you. They act like they're understanding you, things we want. But there's no body, there's no person that we can touch and lean into, no shoulder we can cry on, nobody listening and showing their face that says, I care about you.
Well, that takes me to something else I'd love for you to comment on too. I happen to use AI every day for just mundane assistant kind of
it's quite useful.
tasks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I never trust it with anything. Like there's a great quote in one of the Harry Potter books that says, "Never trust a voice where you can't see where the brain is."
There you go.
Or the mind, or I can't remember if it's brain or mind, but it's a good warning. And heck, that came up 30 years ago. I'm pretty sure that book was one of the early ones.
Yesterday who works in a Montessori school at a very high level and is a very sophisticated woman. And she helps new families come in when they're bringing their kids. And the families have to write essays and things for the application for the children. And she said she realizes that most of what she's getting is from Chat GPT, and so this is a little crudely said the way I'm saying it now, but she was having to communicate to them, what you've said in your essay is clear, understandable, wonderful, but it's not you. And I said, I know it's actually not you. I want to know who you are. I want to hear your voice. It's a response to all the questions, but there's no heart in it.
There's no there. Mm-hmm. Yes. So we could slide down that AI rabbit hole real fast, but I want to bring it back to a thing that you said that really I think we should remember. You say the human brain is perpetually asking 3 questions. Are you there? Do you hear me? And do you choose me?
Yes, those are the things that our big prefrontal cortex is designed to, said, and it's not really these questions, but the questions indicate what it's doing. Is there a human being there that I can attach to? This is primary attachment, like I talked about. Number 2, does that human attune with me? Do they hear me? Do they see me? Is there some resonance through the limbic system that lets us know we're connected? And then number 3, do they choose me? And that really means, am I loved? And that's every single person is built on that. no matter what they look like, now they seem. And so many of the things that look like quite distorted human expressions is because either the lack of love like that, the longing to get what we don't have, the protection of what we do have, all of it's managing this free flow of care, which human beings as mammals require.
And I guess that's back to when I see a family out to dinner and everybody's looking at their iPhone. I'm sitting there with a broken heart saying, that little kid sitting there is saying to themselves, are you there to about their mom and dad? Do you hear me? Because you can hear them saying, mommy, mommy, mommy. Do you hear me? And gosh, the answer to do you choose me is no. If you're staring at your phone, if you're the grown up in the room staring at your phone, your kid is hearing you don't
When
choose me.
I still had my psychotherapy practice and I was in Austin, there was a student from the university. I see university students sometimes, young people. A young man came, smart, good-looking kid. He's very shy, and with me at least. And I couldn't quite understand what had brought him to me, and so I kept nudging him as gently as I could, and without disturbing him about it. And finally, with great shame, he said, I don't know how to have a conversation. I don't know how to look someone in the eye and actually talk to them.
So I'm in the dental office, of course, talking to 30 people a day. I meet people like that all the time. And I think one of the kindest things that I probably did all day, tried to give easy shots and tried to, pause whenever someone needed a break, all the things, like trying the kindness. The most kindest thing I could do is make somebody like that not feel as vulnerable. That's what we can all do. To the bag, like the kid that's bagging our groceries, or whatever, we can do that. We can recognize people who are having
That's a good one. You're bagging groceries. Do you look at them in the eye?
Yes.
Do you say hello? Do you say their name? Or it doesn't have to be any big deal. I mean, you're not some like saint for doing it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's human. And like the woman in the wheelchair, you will feel better if you do. It's not one way.
No, that's exactly right. Okay, so there's this great philosopher, Rilke, that we talk about from time to time, and Rumi is one too. One of my favorite poems lately is The Guest House.
Yep.
So I think these times kind of call for us to be more open about, like the Guest House poem suggests. Let them all in. Welcome it all in.
Well, that's part of the O. The O is the opening. Oh,
right.
A concern, a depression, a fear. That's who's here. That's who's arrived at the door. That's what Rumi's saying in that poem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So talk to us about this, a notion of how we get to the edges of our comfort zone. Because I find that's one thing the dental office is, I have to be loving and fired up about meeting 30 people a day, no matter if I think I have something in common with them or not. And it's just taught me that, like, somebody will say something I need to hear every time, no matter who they are. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about this concept of when we speak solely to the choir, we turn our backs on the larger congregation.
We so easily gravitate to the folks we know will hear us or understand us or agree with us. And that's natural, of course. It's very encouraging. It's one of the ways we get nourished. But if you aren't willing to turn around, if you're only preaching to the choir, you don't turn around, you miss the larger group of people, then it may be a little challenging to talk to. Mm-hmm. Or that we might be challenged if we speak to them. Unfortunately, in our culture now, sometimes it actually feels dangerous. Yeah. That's a different situation. We are brought to our edge all the time, Linda. I mean, we don't have to force ourselves.
We don't have to look for it, right?
No, we don't have to look for it. It'll come and get you. It's how we meet that edge that makes all the difference. And once again, we have to pay attention. Is this something that I have the capacity to meet right now? And sometimes the answer is no. And that's it. That's caring for yourself. That's loving and kind to yourself. I can't manage this. I'm going to have to I call it bow and step away. You don't have to reject or fight, just I'm going to have to back off. But you also could have gone by the woman in the wheelchair and not done anything.
Well,
So,
and the part I didn't tell you because it annoyed the heck out of me was at first I was sort of into the road and people were like honking and they were acting crazy. And I was like, God, what are you in such a hurry for? Can't you see I'm trying to help somebody in a wheelchair? I mean, like, they're all those people that are so in their own
yeah.
tunnel that they, and you know, you gotta, yeah, I feel sorry.
Yeah, so we're all, and those people are brought to their edge at that moment, whether they're they feel behind, they're pressed for time,
Yeah.
they don't want to be stopped. It's happening constantly.
Yeah.
So to constantly come back to some, you know that you're brought to your edge when you meet all these protector parts of you that get triggered. The triggering is the information that you've gone to the edge, because you wouldn't be triggered otherwise. If you're triggered, it's like, oh, what's that? And that's what one of my Zen teachers once said, why would you turn a perfectly good practice opportunity into an ordinary event? You can use anything to keep yourself awake, or you could just make it an ordinary event and try to deal with it.
Right. It's lovely. And that's, I found the poem, The Guest House. I want to share it with people. Okay, here's how I'll read it. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as our unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows. Oh, that is a good line. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Comment on any part of that really strikes you, Flint.
That you can do an entire retreat on that and just take it little by little.
I know.
But my kind of little phrase about, oh, now this is suggesting what it's like to stand at the door. And like, oh, now this is what's happening. And the invitation that Rumi is saying is invite instead of judge. You're not the bouncer at the door choosing or slamming or saying, you're going, oh, and see what they're for, what they're bringing, what's there.
I love this line, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of all the furniture.
Yeah, there are times when that's just the nature of things.
And maybe they're clearing you out for some new delight.
And in those moments, there may be parts of you that go, yeah, right, I didn't need that, but that reaction that you're having is also something to investigate, not because it's wrong, because it's showing you where the vulnerability is. It's like, oh, I'm afraid of this. The idea isn't, well, let's not be afraid. No, the idea is to go deeper into the fear and see what it's telling you. It's a signal. And so to pay attention to yourself is empathic. To take care of the suffering is compassion. The ability to hang in there with it shows that you have some balance and equanimity. Doing the whole thing is being kind. Even when you're all stirred up, all that stuff is there.
And then there's something about being ready. I mean, if you have that attitude, the guest house attitude, that's what I call it. Chuck, I say to myself, my husband all the time, Chuck, we need the guest house attitude about this. Somehow when you're ready like that, you can see the genius in others that you so needed to see. And without that attitude, you're missing it.
No, and another way of saying it is the famous line from Suzuki Roshi, the Zen teacher, in his book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, where he said, in beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the mind of the expert, there are few. It's like, come back to beginner's mind. Readiness doesn't mean gear up. Readiness means clear out. so that you can notice. I was going to give a talk at a very large corporate setting a couple of years ago, and the person who was with me was sort of backstage, waiting with me, and I was kind of just walking a little bit and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm clearing out my mind." And he said, "Well," and this was a large luncheon meeting where people were coming in. He said, "Well, why are you doing that? How do you know what you're going to say?" And I said, "I don't." He's like, "What?" I said, I won't know what to say until I go inside and meet the people. Otherwise, I'm just like going on some script or something. It's like coming here today with you. I don't like write down notes or anything. Then I'd try to remember that or think about it, and I would not meet you, and I wouldn't listen to your questions because I try to be presenting something. You have to clear out, go back to beginner's mind, so that then you can respond. He says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert mind, there are few.
I love that. What if we thought about that? Instead of gearing up, we cleared out.
It's a
That's a
different
great
thing.
sense.
And it's part of what Rumi is suggesting.
Yeah.
Like stand at the door, but not with all your ideas. Stand at the door with curiosity. Remember last time I said curiosity is the universal solvent. Use that. It's like, oh, well, let's see. It doesn't mean being foolish. Discernment's required, but you're not going to have clear discernment unless you pay attention. You're going to be going off of ideas inside all the time.
That's lovely. Okay, there's a couple of topics I really want to ask you about before we wrap up. I'm kind of on a pattern here of doing some talks these days about two things that I'd love to get your opinion on. Mm-hmm. One is very, very practical. I'm seeing that some of us are reacting to the chaos of the world by seeking trusted advisors. And I'm talking about ordinary other people in our lives, like the dry cleaner that we'll drive across town for. The dentist that always makes us feel safe. I just drove 6,000 miles to get a certain kind of travel trailer. 6,000 miles, 3,100 miles out to Oregon and 31 back. And I'm interviewing somebody from that business because I recognized I did that. I passed thousands of trailers that I would have loved for Dr. Chuck and I to camp in. But I had this one place I wanted to do business with. Mm-hmm. We're doing that in our lives now. We're seeking trusted advisors. We're wanting to do business with the people that make us feel like we have an insider. It's a safety. We trust them. They can tell us the hard things and we'll hear it.
Part of what you're saying is it's not based simply on the product that's being sold. It's the relationship in which that thing happened. And that's everything we've been talking about. Does this person get me? Do they care about me? Are they connected? It's relationality that makes the difference. Not necessarily. There's lots of good products and lots of good stuff out there.
Yeah.
So
I'm calling that the gratitude economy. We're so grateful for this hairdresser in our life that we'll drive all the way across town. We pay twice as much for that we have to for a haircut, but we're so grateful they're in our lives.
That's right.
And I think it's an outgrowth of the pandemic as well. But I just notice people, they're just choosing to do business and be places and reward folks who feel good in our lives.
Absolutely. There's a recent, talking about movies, there's a recent documentary, it just came out on this most recent tour that Bruce Springsteen did. It's called Road Diary. It's really good. And it's very different because he's talking about this in a different way, where is something he's trying to communicate about being 75 years old. And he says at one point in a voiceover, he said, people don't pay to come to listen to their favorite songs and to see my aging face. They come for the presence that we bring. And he says more, but he said it's about the presence, about being here, now, together in this town. Now, we're caring about each other. He said that's what they come for.
I recently interviewed Noel Paul Stuckey, who is Paul of Peter, Paul, and Mary. Mm-hmm. And he talks about that. He talks about that in how he goes into a concert, or how a musician like him really thinks about the relationship they have with the audience.
Yeah.
And I don't go to a lot of music concerts, and I didn't even, my brother does. Oh my God. They live in
Mhm.
Nashville. They go to concerts every weekend. And all of a sudden I had this light bulb moment where Paul explained to me, or Noel, was explaining to me something I just was in complete dark about.
Mhm.
But it's this interactive moment of human connection.
Yeah. Loving presence is at the heart of all of this. That's really what we're
Mhm.
talking about. The capacity to see each other, notice each other, recognize each other, care for each other. That's either what's missing when there's pain or what's satisfying when it's available.
Mm-hmm. And I think it can happen in the grocery store. I'm
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
absolutely. It
Driving down the
better.
road, the toll
Better
booth.
happen
My husband
anywhere.
is the funniest person in the world with toll booth operators.
Mhm.
We take 10 times longer to go through a toll booth. He has this wonderful way of, he just
Yeah.
wants to be there until he can tell that person feels good about their day
Yep.
because he's been in it. So
Mhm.
weird. Okay,
And
the
it
other thing
happens with a word, a phrase, an eye
yeah.
contact, especially.
Yeah, and he makes people feel so good about themselves. He's lovely. So that's something I want to encourage people as a New Year's or a starting fresh sort of a thing, is to really recognize how many opportunities we have in our lives all
Yeah.
day long, to be totally present for another person. It is just
Yeah. And
it,
if it's a new year, then stand at that door with Rumi's encouragement,
yes,
open it, and go, wow, okay, what's
yes,
this going to be?
and oh, now
Now
this.
this.
It's so great. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there, but I want you to to comment on something that I ask all my guests. Interviews can be like this, lavishly long, or they can be 3 minutes. If we'd only had 3 minutes to talk together today, Flint, the way you look at the world, the questions people are asking you, what do you really wish people knew in this moment?
Someone asked me not long ago, you've been a therapist, you've been a Zen teacher, you've done all this stuff. What do you really do? And I said, I think my job is to help soften barriers to love. Um, really, everything comes down to that. If it's not guided by that, it's sort of like not worth doing. And I don't mean big. I just mean this kind of care we're talking about. The ability to continue to come back to, we're here for a really short time. We don't really know why. We have all these things to do while we're here. We're with other people. All that really makes sense in the end is love. And it doesn't have to be just from people. Sometimes it's from the beautiful tree in your yard,
Yeah.
or the shape of the ice on your window in the winter, or whatever
Yes.
it is.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Look,
Yes.
look, like
Oh,
DeWitt says, look for what's right in the world.
yeah.
Look for
That
what you
is
learn to do.
DeWitt Jones's mantra in that whole thing. I'm going to link that people
Okay.
to DeWitt Jones's TED Talk, which is called "Celebrate What's Right with the World." I think he's in a large part responsible for what we've done at the Goodness Exchange all these years, because that
Mhm.
notion pretty much is a nice frame for what we've been trying to do.
Mhm.
Okay, well, Flint, we could talk forever, and I thank you so much for bringing these little
We can always talk
sparkling.
again, but today has been great.
I know, and thank you for helping us. For those of you who are catching this at the new year, or at a point in your life when you can receive it like it's going to be a new year,
Yeah.
this is a great gift that you have in the world, and I can't thank you enough for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you, Linda.
Okay, thanks so much. Have a great day. I hope the insights that Flint and I have shared with you will help you through your week, and you will feel and experience that it is still an amazing world.